friends, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new here. This is The Heart and the Honeybee, and I am Courtney, a stay-at-home mom, a wife, and an indie romance author. Today we are going to talk about something that I have been wanting to do, and I have been doing it here and there, and that is developing like a personal curriculum or like a self-study program. I talked about it at the beginning of the year, and I had these like grand ideas and grand plans for it, and of course real life does not always go according to plan, and I have published 2 books this year, one at the end of March and one at the end of June. And because these are the first 2 books that I have ever published, I was not very I guess I had no real idea about how much, not only like time that would take, but also how much like mental energy you have to devote to those kind of creative pursuits. And as a result, if I wasn't drafting or editing or trying to figure out how to market these books, I was essentially, being a sloth on the sofa and watching YouTube videos. So I did not, I won't say I didn't have any free time, but I did not prioritize my free time into doing anything where I would really have to engage my brain, which I think is the entire point of designing a curriculum for yourself. But now that I am out of the weeds, so to speak, in that area of my life, although I do have another book coming out at the end of October, I have a better grasp of what I need to do and like how much actual time that's going to take, how much sort of mental energy I'm going to have to give to those things. So I feel like I am in a place now where I can juggle more things. So this entire curriculum was kind of developed after I was watching a YouTube video. So I was watching a video on Read, Rant, Review where Kaylee reads, as she says, lots of crazy books, and then she talks to us about them. Oftentimes it is a rant. So what started as a rant video on like a spicy retelling of, I think it was Peter Pan, is kind of what sent me down this path. And from that video, on one of the nights where I couldn't sleep, I just started wondering, I wasn't looking for like spicy retellings, but I was looking for like fairy tales for adults, and if that was even a thing that existed. And so that like Google search led me down an entire rabbit hole where I started wanting to understand more about like fairy tales. Lots of different cultures have their own versions of them, and a lot of times they are very similar kinds of stories. And so started thinking about that, like what is this thing about fairy tales that sort of transcends cultures and generations and all of that. And that led me to even more of a Google search where I was finding more kind of academic papers about the topic, which is really interesting. There were actually, to my surprise, lots of courses that already had like syllabi, is that the plural of syllabus? Syllabi posted online that you could look at, which I did, but all of that to say that what really interested me about fairy tales specifically was kind of looking at them through more of like a feminist lens, which is something that's really important to me, and figuring out where we can separate those patriarchal narratives from these stories. And also because I am in my 50s, I really became interested in looking at them, trying to figure out why so many times the villains in these stories are older, childless women. And I have to say that is, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to say that that is likely tied to patriarchy, but anyway. And so that is where I find myself today. So for the rest of the summer, I am doing a curriculum around fairy tales. I am calling it Deconstructing Fairy Tales. And let's see, is that what I'm actually calling it? Yes. Deconstructing Fairy Tales Summer Study. And so what I am intending to do is to read the standard sort of traditional fairy tales, which before they get watered down and given to us as kids, often are kind of scary. And so I want to look at those traditional fairy tale stories, which I have several books. Oh, when I saw this copy of Grimm's Fairy Tales at Half Price Books, I had to get it. So I have this copy of traditional fairy tales, and then I also got this one, which is just like a more modernized language, I guess. But it is, I mean, they're essentially the same. This one just has more modern language to it. So I'm going to read the traditional fairy tales from these books. And then I also have some more like academic leaning nonfiction to help me look at these stories in a different way and start deconstructing them. And these are the ones that I have so far: Women and Other Monsters, Building a New Mythology. Well, I'll just read you what it says. The folklore that has shaped our dominant culture teems with frightening female creatures. In our language, in our stories, many written by men, we underline the idea that women who step out of bounds, who are angry or greedy or ambitious, who are overtly sexual or not sexy enough, aren't just outside the norm. They're unnatural, morally deformed, monstrous. But maybe the traits we've been told that make us dangerous and undesirable are actually our greatest strengths. So I am excited to dive into this one. And then I have The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. And I think this is sort of a more like retelling of these stories, some of these stories. in a different way, because it says, from familiar fairy tales and legends, Red Riding Hood, Bluebeard, Puss in Boots, Beauty and the Beast, vampires, werewolves, Angela Carter has created an absorbing collection of dark, sensual, fantastic stories. So I think these are sort of retellings or reimaginings of these stories that give the female characters in these stories more agency. I have this one called Witches, Witch Hunting, and Women by Sylvia Federici. And this says, we are witnessing a new surge of interpersonal and institutional violence against women, including new witch hunts. This surge of violence has occurred alongside an expansion of capitalist social relations. In this new work that revisits some of the main themes of Caliban and the Witch, Sylvia Federici examines the root cause of these developments and outlines the consequences for women affected in their communities. She argues that no less than the witch hunts in the 16th and 17th century Europe and the New World, this new war on women is a structural element of the new forms of capitalist accumulation. These processes are founded on the destruction of people's most basic means of reproduction. Like at the dawn of capitalism, what we discover behind today's violence against women are processes of enclosure, land dispossession, and the remolding of women's reproductive activities and subjectivity. So this is more of a I would say modern view of how, or the way that I would be interpreting it in this study is more of a modern view on how these ideas in these fairy tales sort of gave validity to the witch hunts in the 17th, is that when it was? 16th and 17th century, and how those ideas are still very pervasive in modern culture, modern American culture especially. I can only speak on that because I'm American. So I have that as well. And then I have some other books that I have like ebook copies of from the library. So let's see, what do I have on here? So I have The Ripening by Sharon Blackie. If Women Rose Rooted, also by Sharon Blackie. And then I have some books on hold, I think. Maybe, oh, Women Who Run with Wolves is another one that I have on hold. And, well, I have it on hold, but I'm not sure if it's going to come through, so I may actually end up buying this one on Amazon, The Heroine with 1001 Faces. And this author also has another book that I'm interested in, so I may end up like adding some books to the study. I also wanted recommendations for some fiction that kind of tied in with what I was doing as I started this whole thing, looking for kind of adult versions of fairy tales. So one of the ones that was recommended was Bitter Greens by Kate Forsyth, which this is interesting because she is also a oracle card. She has oracle cards that she has designed, which I'm not using her oracle cards, but I am tying in tarot and oracle into this study, which I will touch on shortly. But I have this one. These are some of the other novels that came recommended. So I have Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed, The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young, The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. Sorry if I butchered that. And Boy Snow Bird by Helen Oyemi. And all of these were recommended by my librarian. So I do want to encourage you, like if there's something that you're interested in, use your library as a resource. Use your librarians. They are amazing resources as well. And what else? So the other thing I am doing is tying Oracle and Tarot into this study as well. I am using the Witch's Wisdom Tarot, which is something I've had this deck for a while and have been a little intimidated by it just because the interpretation of the tarot is not something that I am used to. But I am very excited to dive into it. So the designer of this deck is like a civil rights attorney and a witch. So she is kind of coming to it through that lens. So I'm really excited to really dive into using this as I work my way through the rubrics and the syllabus, and kind of talk a little bit about that. And then I'm also using the Fairy Tale Heroine Oracle, which was created by Dr. Sharon Blackie, who's the author of 2 of the books that I am going to use as reference material as well. So I thought this was the perfect Oracle deck to pick up. So then in terms of like how I'm breaking the study down, let's talk a little bit about that. So each kind of week, although it's going to take me longer than a week to kind of get into this, has like a tale that I am going to focus on. So for example, the first week is the tale of Hansel and Gretel, how they walked into the forest on purpose and how the forest represents freedom and what it means to sort of leave the path that you're supposed to follow. And then, so there's the tale and then there's the lore. So the lore involves reading some of the academic text. So for Hansel and Gretel, for example, I want to read the opening sections of Estes, who is one of the authors that I am reading, on the forest and the descent. And then the thread that sort of links this to my own personal experience is another thing that I want to explore. So for Hansel and Gretel, for me, it would be what stepping off of the path meant for me. And this is something that I've really like struggled with in my own personal life, sort of trying to navigate the path that I created for myself as like a young person, or what I thought the path would be, and kind of stepping off of that and like the guilt and the shame that came with that, and coming through to appreciate what, like, how full that made my life. And then the practice is going to be using my tarot and oracle cards. I have some spreads that I have just kind of created to help me tap into the theme of the tale. And then the making is for me to kind of use the lessons in the broader lessons in that tale as a prompt, and to use that as a writing exercise for myself. So I want to write around 250 words about, for example, the day that everything changed. So it would be the moment that the protagonist steps off the path. I can write like a fictionalized version of that, or I can write it more as like a journal entry for myself. And then finally, the reflection for this study of Hansel and Gretel would be, what did my forest give me that the village never could? So why, essentially why it was such a benefit to my life to kind of go off the path and seek refuge in the forest versus staying on the path and sort of becoming a larger part of this village. So that is kind of how I'm going to do it. I think I have like 10 different tales that I've kind of gone through. I Googled a bunch of like questions that referred me to different resources so that I could kind of pull together all of the things that I wanted to look at. In addition to that, I also found a number of like YouTube videos talking about deconstruction of fairy tales, TED Talks that have this same kind of thesis and what that means. One of the things that I should say, in addition to this study, one of the things that I'm really excited about doing is to pull other forms of media into this. So I am going to watch some films. So films that kind of came recommended were The Witch, Maleficent, The Company of Wolves, and Pan's Labyrinth, and Ever After. So I am going to watch those movies and be mindful of the like messaging and what I can pull out of them. And then on top of movies, I have decided to add music to it. I am not, music has not really been my primary like form of media that I like listen to. It's not, I know that there are people who are like huge music people, and that's not to say that like I don't enjoy music, because I do, but it's just not like my go-to thing, which is very weird, because when I like if I'm writing and working and I add music, it helps. When I'm cleaning and I listen to music, it helps. So I don't know why I don't do it more frequently, but for this study, I really wanted to pull in music as well. So I have, basically I Googled like artists and albums who had this kind of like fairy tale-esque feeling to their music. I also wanted to, most of it was like kind of folky, like acoustic. That's kind of the music that I listen to most. I also was looking to find some new artists that I had never heard of, and I really wanted to find more Black artists who are producing this kind of music. So for like week 1, The Tale of Hansel and Gretel, which kind of I guess the feeling of this study, I'm calling it The Woods, right? So for week 1, I listened to Hosier, which, I mean, I always listen to him. Anyway, the album is Unreal and Unearthed, and then I found another artist, her name is Valerie June, and the album that I am listening to along with the first one is called The Moon and the Stars Prescriptions for Dreamers, which I think is really great. Also, like Florence and the Machine was recommended, Corinne Bailey Rae, who I already love, and the album Black Rainbow, which is one of my favorites, Kate Bush, Lana Del Rey, let's see, Moses Sumney is an artist that I have never heard of. So I'm really excited that I get to add another layer to this curriculum so that it becomes a little bit more immersive for me. So yeah, I will probably kind of update how I'm doing in videos. I think maybe I'm going to like vlog a little bit of engaging with this curriculum so you can see exactly how I'm doing it week to week and how it's going. But I am very excited to get started and just give my brain something else to do. I have I mentioned it in some other videos, but I have like an app block on my phone, and so I really only allow myself to be on social media like an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half at night, and most of the time I don't even use that entire like hour and a half. The less that I am doom scrolling, the less I feel the desire to it. It's kind of like when you give up sugar or junk food or soda or caffeine, the more you abstain from it, the less you have the desire to have it. So I've realized like how much free time I have when I'm not doom scrolling and trying to talk myself out of reading the comments. So this is how I am going to spend the rest of my slow, intentional summer. I would love it if you are doing something similar or have created a curriculum for yourself, to let me know in the comments like what you've been studying, what you've been reading, so that I can maybe add that to a future list. And if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button down below, turn on your notifications. If you have made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you so much for spending part of your day hanging out with me, and I will see you in my next one.